Hey, what is going on guys? RvzStealth here, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about a few sleeper OP picks for patch 6.11. So all of these champions right now have above a 50% win rate, but they aren't picked very often. All of these champions have below a 5% pick rate, so I feel like they are strong and they should be played more. So if you guys have not tried out any of these champions this patch, then I would definitely recommend it. So that being said guys, let's get into the video. So first up is going to be Cassiopeia. Now Cassiopeia right now only has a 0.3% play rate, but her win rate is absolutely crazy at 56%. Now this might just be because the Cassiopeia mains are playing her, but I have tried her myself a few games, and I definitely do think she is a pretty strong pick right now. She's got a really good mid to late game. Once you do get a few items on Cassiopeia, then you start to do a lot of damage. Her power spike, once she does get Rylai's, is really good as well. The Rylai's item just synergizes so well on her because her W can proc it really easily, and if you just throw your W down, it's such a strong zoning tool, so you can use that really well to slow the enemies and kite them in team fights. Her Q can also be used to kite enemies really easily because number one, you're going to slow them with the Rylai's, and number two, you're going to get the speed boost because that's what your Q does. So overall, Cassiopeia is a really strong kiting champion, and let's not forget that her ultimate is absolutely crazy strong as well. If you can hit that on a few targets in a team fight, then that could just end up winning your team the game right there. Her E is also really strong now. I really like the changes she got to her E because before you needed to have the enemy champion poisoned to be able to spam out your E, but now you don't need to have them poisoned to be able to spam it. The only thing is, if you do have them poisoned now, it's going to do a lot more damage, but if they're not poisoned, then her E isn't going to do a whole lot of damage. So you still want to try to land your poison first and then hit your E, but you can still spam it out even if you don't have the enemy champion poisoned. Another change she got to her E is it's kind of like the Annie Q now, or it basically is like the Annie Q. Whenever you do last hit a minion, it does refresh the mana on your E. So this is really nice for the laning phase for last hitting. I find her auto attack animation really awkward and kind of hard to use, so I just find myself last hitting with Cassiopeia's E a lot of the time, and I find myself rarely missing CS because of that. The change she got to her W is also really nice too because it does provide a larger field of poison now, so overall I do really like the changes Cassiopeia did receive. Now a few cons to Cass are that she is a little bit harder to play than some of the other champions in the game, and she also is pretty mana hungry in the early game, especially when you are spamming out your E. Next up is going to be Ashe. Right now, I really don't know why Ashe hasn't been seeing as much play recently. She does have the highest win rate for any AD carry at 54%, but her play rate is relatively low at only 5% this patch. The reason I think Ashe is such a strong pick right now for AD carry is because you don't even need to do too well in the laning phase as her to be successful. I found myself losing lane as Ashe or just going even, and I'm still able to win those games a lot of the time because her ultimate is just such a strong ability. Because it is the global stun, if you can just get one or two good ults off in a mid-game teamfight as Ashe, then you can change the momentum of the game and you can just end up winning your team the game by getting good ults off. For example, if the enemies are sieging down mid lane and you see the enemy AD carry move forward a little bit, you can just use your ultimate, it'll stun them, your team can jump on them, and if you do end up killing the enemy AD carry, you're probably going to be able to win that fight after that since it's going to be a 5v4. So because of Ashe's ultimate, I do think that she is a very strong pick. She's also a pretty good tank shredder. Once she does pick up her core build of the Infinity Edge and the Runames, then she does really good at kiting and she becomes a monster in team fights. She just starts to do a load of damage. The vision with her E is really nice too. Whenever I do play Ashe, I like to use my E at level 3 when I get it to see where the enemy jungler is. I usually put it either on their red buff or their blue buff, and then I'll know whether I need to back off or if I can go more aggressive depending on where the enemy jungler is. And it's also nice for checking Baron and Dragon once you do get to those mid to late game team fights. She's also one of the longer ranged AD carries in the game, so that just allows her to do pretty well in the laning phase. She can poke down a lot of the shorter ranged AD carries like Lucian, Vayne, and Sivir. A few cons to Ashe are that she does not have a gap closer, and she also is weaker against hard engage due to the fact that she does not have a dash or a blink. Next up is going to be Rumble. So right now Rumble is actually a pretty underrated pick in my opinion. He has been receiving a few buffs here and there, and I feel like right now he's sitting at a pretty solid win rate at 52%. He's only picked 2% of the time, but with a lot of the meta champions right now in the top lane being melee, he can do pretty well in those matchups. Where Rumble really shines though is once he can get to his core build of Leandries and Rylai's. Once he does get that, he becomes a crazy strong teamfight champion. Even before that, once you do pick up the Haunting Guys on Rumble and you start to teamfight, then your ultimate does a lot of damage. Even if you do fall behind in the laning phase as Rumble, you can still be relevant on him like Ashe because his ultimate is just such a strong ability if you can use it correctly. One good Rumble ult could end up changing the tides of the game, and it could end up tilting the game in your favor. So I feel like if you can play Rumble correctly, then he can be a very strong pick right now. He does have the shield too, which allows him to trade pretty nicely in the laning phase. As long as you can stay at around 50% heat on Rumble, then you can definitely out trade your opponents a lot of the time in lane. And a few cons to Rumble, or one con to him, is that he is a little bit harder to play since his ultimate is a really strong ability, but it can be a little bit awkward to use at times. So once you do get used to landing Rumble's ultimate, he can be a really good pick. But if you haven't played a whole lot of him yet, then I would get used to him in normals before heading into ranked. Next up is going to be Pantheon. Now this is mainly Pantheon mid lane. I feel like mid Pantheon is much more underrated than top lane Pantheon. Top lane Pantheon is still pretty underrated right now. I think he's only at around a 5% pick rate, but mid lane Pantheon only has a 1% pick rate, and I think he is a really sleeper OP pick right now. So a lot of the meta mid lane champions are pretty squishy mages. We're seeing a lot of Anivia, Vel'Koz right now. I think they are two of the strongest mid picks this patch, and Pantheon can do really well if the enemy team does have a squishy mid champion, since what he wants to do is if he can poke them down at level 1, then he can go for a cheesy all-in at level 2 with his stun, Q, and ignite. So I feel like as long as you can do well in the early game as Pantheon, then you can be really successful on him. I also like him for mid lane because his ultimate can be utilized really effectively. You can either look to gank top lane with your ultimate at level 6, or you can go bot lane, and I just feel like you do have a lot of snowball potential when you are playing Pantheon in the mid lane. He's also a fairly easy champion to play. He doesn't really have any skill shots. I guess you could say his E is a skill shot, but it's very easy to hit. And he is also a very strong tower diving champion because of his passive. So when you are playing Pantheon, just make sure you do use your passive correctly. You should have your passive up already when you are going for a tower dive, so don't go for the stun right away unless you have to. If you can wait, take that tower shot, proc your passive, and then use your stun to block another tower shot, then that's what you want to try to do when you are playing as Pantheon. Now, a few cons to him are that he is a little bit weaker if you do fall behind, since he does not provide that good AoE crowd control for team fights, and he also does fall off in the late game compared to some of the other mid lane champions. So next up is going to be Brand. After Brand did receive that little rework to his passive in patch 6.9, he hasn't been seeing the most play, but he has been a pretty successful pick throughout these past few patches. His win rate has stayed above 50% for the past few patches now, and I feel like he is definitely a very underrated pick in the mid lane. Once you do get to those mid-game teamfights as Brand, you can start to deal a ton of damage while also providing pretty good crowd control if you do have your Leandries and your Rylai's. If you get those two items and it's around the 20-minute point in the game, then definitely look to start teamfighting as him, because the amount of AoE damage you can get off with him with his W and his ultimate, as well as his passive now, is just absolutely crazy. He does have pretty good poke in the laning phase too with his W, so if you are going up against a melee pick in the laning phase, then look to take advantage of that. Try to poke them with your W and zone them from CS. His ultimate is kind of a press R to win ability as well. If you can get a good ultimate off in a team fight and you can get a few bounces off, then it can deal a ton of damage and it can just end up winning your team that team fight. A few cons to Brand are that he does not have any mobility, he doesn't have a dash or a gap closer, so you do have to be careful if you are pushing out in the laning phase, and he is also somewhat skill shot reliant with his W and his Q. So that is going to be all for this video, guys. If you did enjoy, then please be sure to leave a like, subscribe if you have not already, and also let me know down in the comment section below some sleeper OP picks that you guys have been playing this patch. So thanks for watching, guys. Have an awesome day, and I will see you in my next video.